Welcome to Crossbow Appreciation Month. This is 31 videos in 31 days. Why? Because it's Crossbow Appreciation Month. That's August on Death by Bungee. The difference between aiming out of a tree stand down at your target and aiming out of a blind directly at your target. That is this episode of Death by Bungee. Those of you watching Death by Bungee know I like to hunt out of tree stands. I like to hunt out of blinds both. Blind hunting, I think, is my favorite way to hunt deer. I like it because you're kind of secluded a little bit in there. You don't have to worry about your movement quite as much. It really works well for filming your hunts, which I like to do. Video is a big part of what I do. A big reason why I do all this is because I like working with the cameras, like doing the video, filming the deer, all that kind of stuff. And from the ground, you just can't beat the image quality that you get with a nice camera from ground level. So that's always a reason to do it too. But there's a big difference, and I think that I'm going to do a bunch of aiming videos this season here on Death by Bungee. I've done some in the past, and I've noticed that they got a lot of traction. They got a lot of people viewing them, and it tells me people really need help or really want more information about aiming at deer, aiming at your target from a tree stand or from a blind, and that sort of thing. Accuracy is number one with crossbow hunting. I've said that over and over. It remains true today. And a good shot with just about any crossbow is going to kill deer. So that's what we're really going for here. But you got to be able to make those good shots. Your point of aim has to be the same as your point of impact, right? This video is going to compare and contrast the two and the difference between aiming from the ground level, like the way we normally practice probably with your crossbow, but then what do you do when you're from a tree stand? And I guess that's a good place to start. Let's start by saying, hey, you've got to practice from both. If you're going to hunt out of a tree stand, you absolutely should use your crossbow ahead of time from a tree stand. You should get a tree stand, set it up. I've set a tree stand up right here in the grove next to the house. So I can go up in this tree right here and aim at the deer target back there. And I'm going to put out my other targets and all that sort of thing and be able to shoot from this location and test that crossbow and do some videos and all that fun stuff. But it's very important that you have some experience and that you shoot from a tree stand. It's not the same as shooting from the ground. You're gonna need to be familiar with the shooting rail or whatever you're using to hold up your crossbow. I can shoot off my knee in a tree stand. I've done that before. Shooting off a shooting rail, I love that. That's very important. And really, you should do the same thing from your blind. You should set that blind up ahead of time, shoot a few targets in the yard or something like that, and make sure that once you get a field, that once you sit in that blind, you are comfortable with it. Same with a tree stand. There are some similarities between hunting out of a tree stand and hunting off the ground. There's one big important thing that is the same in both instances, and that is, and I say this over and over, gravity only affects the flight of an arrow across a horizontal plane. Sounds like big words and all that good stuff, but if Sir Isaac Newton were here, he would tell us that if you're shooting from a tree stand up here in the air and you're shooting down at your target, right, and your target's over here, what's going to happen is, let's say, for example, that you're shooting 30 yards, right? That's a 30-yard shot. However, the bottom of the tree stand, right, the bottom of the tree is 20 yards away from the target, just for the sake of our example. If that's the case, really you're taking a 20-yard shot. It only matters the horizontal distance. The vertical distance does not matter, okay? So this might be 30, 40, 50 yards, whatever. If this is 20, you're gonna shoot as though it's 20 yards, and that will make your point of impact exactly the same as your point of aim. If you aim as though this is 20 yards, your point of aim and your point of contact will be the same. If you sit in a tree stand and shoot as though this is 50 yards, when in reality this is 20, the difference is you're going to have a shot that's way high. It's going to go way high because you've raised the barrel of that crossbow up to compensate for what's a 60 or 50 or 40-yard shot, whatever number we pick here. But the reality is gravity's only going to affect it as though it's a 20-yard shot. So it's a 20-yard shot. Your point of aim would be for 20 yards and your point of impact will be perfect. That's an important observation. But the reason I say it's the same for a tree stand or a blind is because on a blind, typically we're taking a flat shot. Maybe not always, but the gravity is going to affect the arrow the same either way. And if you're on the ground shooting straight at your target, whatever distance it is, and that's what we're going to aim for. That will be our point of aim. The key there is to get a good rangefinder that calculates both the angle of declination or elevation for you. It calculates the overall distance from you and your tree stand down to your target, but also the distance horizontally. And then you're going to use that horizontal distance, that shoot as distance, to actually choose your point of aim, okay? And decide which reticle to use in the scope. Another thing that's not really that much different between a tree stand or a blind, shooting horizontally out of a blind or vertically, diagonally out of a tree stand. Another thing that's not that much different is choosing the point of aim, okay? Where are you going to aim on that deer? Now in a tree stand, because you're shooting down at an angle, you are going to aim a little bit higher if that deer's pretty close to you, because if you aim too low, you might clip the inside lung and not hit the opposite lung. So you want to aim just a little bit higher, your point of aim. I'm not saying pick a point of aim and then raise it and just pretend that you're going to shoot a couple inches above your point of aim. Make sure your point of aim is an inch or two higher, depending on how far away that deer is. Get comfortable with that by practicing out of your tree stand. But you're going to want to take those shots so that you have a greater chance of hitting both lungs. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that your arrow, even if you're shooting out of a tree stand, has an arc to it. The farther out you shoot, I don't care how fast your crossbow is, they all have an arc to them. And the farther out your shot is, the greater that arc will be. And because of that, because you've got to raise the barrel of the crossbow to compensate for that. So you're going to be lobbing that arrow up in the air. The reason that's important is because the farther out that shot goes, that means that your arrow has a greater arc to it and might be coming down on the deer. So we have to take that into account in picking a shot. If your point of aim is too low and that deer's way out there, then that arrow is coming down and you have a greater chance of only getting one lung, because as it makes contact with that deer, it's coming down at a steeper angle. It may not have enough of a flatness to it to actually hit both lungs. That assumes that the broadhead allows that arrow to pass straight through the deer at the same angle that it's coming to the deer at, okay? We can only control the point of aim and to some extent the point of impact if our gear is functioning properly and we take a good shot. We cannot control what's going to happen once that broadhead hits that deer. They do all kinds of funny things, okay? Your exit wound should line up with your entrance wound, but they don't always do that. Once that broadhead opens up, sometimes it pulls the arrow in one direction or another, or the deer's moving. Lots of things can affect what that broadhead is going to do when it makes contact with that deer. So keep that in mind. But those longer shots, you do increase the likelihood of having problems, right? You have a greater risk of having problems the longer out those shots go, the farther those shots go. The fact that that angle, you're lobbing that arrow and there's an arc to it, that also is another reason not to take those long shots, because you've got a greater arc to that arrow as it's making contact with your deer, a greater chance of getting one lung instead of two. Now that's where it gets really nice with a blind. With a blind, you got a real good, comfortable target in front of you. And I aim at a blind, out of a blind, the same way I would in the yard, shooting across the yard, that sort of thing. I aim the bungee triangle, talked about that in other videos, but that's basically a triangle that we can design, we can draw between the shoulder blade coming down, going back across the upper leg of the deer, and then sort of up and down, connect the dots there, and you got a nice little triangle. In that triangle, from a tree stand, I would aim a little bit higher in that triangle, maybe a little bit toward the back, depending on whether the deer is quartering to or away from you. But I'd aim a little bit higher in that triangle to compensate for that angle, so that when the arrow goes through, it's going to be able to hit both lungs. If you were to aim too low in the triangle from a tree stand, you got a great chance of just making too low a shot. All right, you can probably hear the local farmer up there doing his hay and all that good stuff. I moved the target up to 10 yards. I had it out to 20 yards. The problem with that is, out at 20 yards, made my shot look like it was real close to clipping that power line that supplies the power to the tractor shed here. I don't want that to happen. I've got enough things to fix around this place, such as the cupola on the tractor shed. I think you can see that, right? Yeah, it's all falling over there and rotting out. So I can't keep up with stuff like that. It's just, it is what it is. Lots of changes coming to Death by Bungee I'll inform you of in the very near future if I haven't already. But I do have my rangefinder. I've moved it up to 10 yards, and I think that's better because, and here's why, I'm just going to demonstrate that and explain this with this, okay? When I take this rangefinder, and this isn't the most expensive rangefinder. I don't think you need the most expensive rangefinder. You need a good, competent rangefinder that includes both the angle of declination, calculates all that stuff for you, and calculates your shoot as distance. But when I had that target out to 20 yards, when I use this little rangefinder and I shoot out there to 20 yards, all right, see if I get exactly 20, and I'll read, yep, 20. It is 20.0 yards minus 12 degrees angle of declination, and it is a shoot as distance or diagonal distance of 20 yards. It's a 20-yard diagonal shot, but it's also a 20-yard shot from the base of the tree out there using those calculations. Made zero difference. Now, the farther out you go, that's more likely true, but remember, your arrow is going to arc farther, have a greater arc to it the farther out you go too. So that will affect your shot, as we discussed. Now, by moving the target up 10 yards here, I'll do that again. If I can get it to read it, got to lean forward a little bit there. But it doesn't want to read it. Anybody else have problems getting rangefinders to read things? Where this is right now, using the rangefinder, this is 10.9 yards to the target. Shoots at, it's a minus 22 degrees, shoots as 10 yards. Now, I set that target out there, use the rangefinder shooting back at the base of this tree 10 yards. So I figured my seat 10 yards, right? Even though it's a little bit farther. The diagonal distance is going to be 10.9 yards. But the shoot as distance, the horizontal distance, the effect of gravity on my arrow is the same as a 10-yard shot. Now, when I go down in the bottom of the tree stand and shoot, it'll be a 10-yard shot also. How's that? So this should work. And here's the thing too. Now, by moving that target up, I'm not only saving myself the problem of having no power to the tractor shed, I'm also bringing the target closer, so it's increasing the angle of declination. This stuff gets really fancy when you're shooting downhill, a slope downhill. The greater that angle of declination is, the farther that goes, that's the more likely it's going to make a difference in terms of your overall shot. But really, it shouldn't make much difference. I'm almost a yard farther away from the target up here than I am down here. It should make no difference in terms of the shot. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull this bad boy out of here. This special little arrow. You know how many deer I have shot with this arrow? I don't think you do. Actually, you probably do, because you probably have seen a lot of them. But this arrow, this is one of the first fire bolts that I had. I've had this arrow for 8 years probably, and it's probably gone through, I would not guess, I mean, I would not be surprised if it was at least a dozen deer have taken this arrow. So it's a thing, you know, it's a good deal. You know what I mean? Make the best of what you got. That's what I say. And if it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Put that little bad boy in here, make sure it's seated nicely. In case it comes up, and if anybody's wondering, I use rail lube, right? I put on one little slathering of rail lube, a nice sheen before I go out for my shooting. Before I hunt, I would make sure it has a nice sheen, do that once. It's just a one little drop on here, smear it around good, that's all it is. I don't glob it on. Glob it on. I love that. So you don't want to put a lot of it on there. You can have problems with that. But you just want to have a nice sheen. So every time I go to shoot, like this afternoon, I'll take 5, 6, 7, 8 shots, something like that. And I just will lube up the rail one time. That's good enough. Put the crossbow away. Next time I go to shoot, I'll put another drop on there and smear it around on both sides of the rail and lube it up good, and we're good to go. I am going to shoot at the right little orange dot that I have and see how this goes. We're going to activate the Tacticam there, the bungee cam. We'll get that loaded right up here and see how this goes. Now that the bungee cam is adequately activated, we will see how this goes. 10-yard shot. I'm shooting off the shooting rail. It's awful close. Keep those fingers out of the way. Keep the crossbow level, very important. I have no 10-yard reticle. The Tacticam will tell us whether we hit the sticker or not. I think I did, or I think I was real close. But understand this was a 10-yard shot, and that target, those stickers don't stick on here real good. And I thought it's kind of odd. Isn't it weird? This target from Cabela's does not have dots on this side. It only has painted on dots on the other side. I'm going to have to paint some dots on this. Isn't that funny? Lots of times I'll put a sticky target on there and use that. It's not a problem. But nice shot there. I'm pretty happy with that. It knocked that sticker off of there, so I think that's a dead deer or a dead hog or a dead woodchuck or whatever you happen to shoot at, don't you think? So I'm happy with that. I will turn off the Tacticam here. Turn off the bungee cam, and we'll go down there and we will take the same shot from the chair at exactly the same distance, seated in the chair, looking at that target, shooting straight across. We'll see how this goes. Whew, it's pretty sweaty out here, so bear with me. I got a tripod. What I'm going to do, though, is if you can see it right here, what I've got is I got a chair set up. The chair, just so we're clear, is the same as the base of the tree, and that's the tree that the tree stands in. Right there's my tree stand right up there. Move this around so you can see it a little bit. But if you look right here, here's the chair. Measuring from that chair to the target right over there, 10 yards, okay? I'm looking at the viewfinder, sorry about that, but 10 yards. It knocked my little sticker off by the time I got down here, but put a sticker back up. I'm gonna shoot at that little sticker that's left. We'll see how it goes. All right, it's not gonna be focusing on me, it's gonna be focusing on the target so we can get some pretty good video here. Hopefully it'll pick up a high-speed shot, but I'm also gonna use the tact cam too. Down to my last arrow. For what it's worth, I only carry 3 arrows typically in the quiver, and the reason for that is that way it sits a lot better on the shooting rail in a tree stand if it only has 3. That's just something I do in my crossbow. I don't think that's something everybody needs to do, but it works for me. It works in my overall setup. We are recording. I checked again. I'm going to take a 10-yard shot now. If I can do that, get in here. Hopefully, we can take a 10-yard shot. That's sitting up kind of high. Got to lower the old Caldwell Dead Shot field pod here. I am not sponsored by them or anybody else, just letting you know what I use. People ask about that all the time. Love this thing for practicing. I don't use it for hunting, so in case that comes up or you're wondering. Taking a shot directly at it. Again, activating bungee cam, getting that ready. Holding onto the stock, I can feel it vibrate when that Tacticam is ready to film, starts filming, it vibrates. I can feel that on the stock, so it's very handy that way. Taking a shot directly at the sticker that is remaining. 10-yard reticle, getting right up there good. Nice and steady on this. Boom! I could sit here and brag to you about what a great crossbow this is, but I absolutely 100% hope that whatever crossbow you are using maintains perfect accuracy the way this thing does. I haven't been shooting this at all. I haven't shot it since I was preparing for spring gobbler, but look at that. 2 dead-on shots, 10 yards. I mean, what do you expect, right? If we can't hit a little dime-sized piece there at 10 yards, then we're doing something wrong. Let's move in and see what we got for shots. And I'm going to show you a couple of interesting little features here real quick. There's your Caldwell Dead Shot field pod for those of you who might be interested in such things. And there is your bungee, and hopefully you're interested in that, and hopefully you have your own bungee. But let's move in here, see what we got for our shots. I have the stabilizer on, but I can bet this is going to be a big old mess, big old jerky shot. I'm pretty picky about my filming. That's my big thing. So, but here's your shots. Look at that. They were both dead on. And the point here is, the takeaway is this. What I was trying to point out, and this illustrates 2 things very well. They illustrate the fact that you don't aim high or low from a tree stand. You aim where you want to make contact. You might adjust your point of aim depending on your height and your angle and all that. But that's where you want to hit on the deer, and it has more to do with the deer's vitals. When it comes to the overall shot, it's the same both ways, right? Doesn't make much difference. But the other thing that we can illustrate with this is, look at the difference, okay? One straight in, that would be like if you shot out of a blind. The other one is not straight in. The other one is up in the air. And that one's angled down. You got to take that into account because that can decrease the ability to get double lung shots. I know that's a lot of information to share in this video. I've been making a couple of these videos trying to share as much as possible, and I hope you get something out of this. Make sure you subscribe for future videos here from Death by Bungee. I hope that your summer is shaping up nicely. You're getting your gear all squared away and getting all set up for a great upcoming crossbow season. And until next time, all hail Bungee. Seated here. All right, seated here, got the crossbow, gonna shoot 10 yards. Let's see how that, I think that'll look. is a fly on my lens. He's not going to affect the focus, apparently. It looks good. So, the difference between aiming out of a tree stand down, I've done other videos about where to aim on a deer. I've done videos about how to aim out of a tree stand, whether you aim high out of a tree stand, whether you aim low out of a tree stand, that sort of thing. Ooh, get that fly off of there. I've done a variety of videos about whether you aim high out of a tree stand, whether you aim low out of a tree stand, that sort of thing.